Hi everybody, welcome to Module 2 for EDCI 323. Here is what we're going to accomplish in this module. This module is all about productivity applications as well as how they can be used to their fullest in instruction. We'll also take a look at copyright law, how it applies to education, spend a little time planning out how your future classroom will run, and along with that we'll also tackle issues of digital citizenship, classroom management when it comes to having technology in every kid's hands. Here are some additional objectives that we'll achieve during this module. You're going to do 2 assignments in this module, and the first up is the gradebook spreadsheet. There are lots of tutorials available to help you along the way with the technical elements of these assignments. So even if you've never performed if you've never done anything with the spreadsheet, performed a formula, if you've never worked in Google Classroom, all these things have tutorials available. So don't feel like you are just being cast out into the wilderness. You'll be able to complete these on your own successfully using those tutorials and the resources available to you. You're also welcome, of course, to go on YouTube and find other videos that'll help answer questions for you. There are plenty out there. Note that if you don't have Microsoft Excel and you would like to use it, Purdue does offer that for free. Everybody who is a student at Purdue has access to Office using that link, which is also in our syllabus and other places in our class. You can also use Apple iWork or your Google Docs, the numbers part of that, the spreadsheet part of that. Alternately, you can always come to campus and use one of the computer labs to complete your assignments using Microsoft Office. Excel is going to be available on every computer there. Depending on what program you use, you might need to search the web a little more for certain functions that we're going to be asked to do in that assignment, because it is slightly different in iWork and Google Docs when it comes to a couple of them slightly more advanced functions. So again, you can get Office for free, so if you prefer to use Excel and just use the resources that I have in this course, which are Excel based, then you can go on there and use it. Just remember when you try to access your Purdue Office 365 for the first time, you're going to be logging in with your @Purdue. Everybody has your username @purdue.edu instead of @pnw.edu. So just remember that when you're logging in. And if you need help with anything, be sure to contact the help desk, because sometimes people's accounts don't want to cooperate, and you just have to contact the help desk. They'll help you out. So with our next discussion, which is the next week in this module, we'll look at copyright law, which is kind of an important thing to know about. We consider copyright, all the barriers that it presents, and all the ways that we can make sure we stay within the law and make sure we don't break any laws while we're also giving students the access to the materials that they need to learn. So you'll be giving a little scenario of a teacher who's used a copyrighted work in his classroom and answer the question, did he act within the letter of the law? If you don't think so, you could, how could he have done things differently so he could stay legal? Copyright, of course, is a big part of teaching when there's so much out there on the web, but not following the law can lead to major problems for you, your school, if you don't act appropriately. So knowing the law is important in today's just wide open internet. You might already know this or have some experience with it. So with this discussion, make sure you post a link to your source information as well. Could be one of the links that's provided in the module, could be something that you found on your own, but just some source info so that we can all look and see what it is that you came up with as you share your thoughts about what this teacher should do or could do maybe differently. Even if you thought he was in the right, what other things could he do to make his lesson easier? So with our classroom management discussion, which is the next discussion, More classrooms, as you might already know, are getting devices in every student's hand. They call it the one-to-one initiative. There's a very high likelihood that you're going to be teaching in a one-to-one classroom within a few years of your graduation, if not right away. So how do you plan to manage all these devices when they're in the kids' hands? We all know kids are kids. Game playing, social media is a big attraction. It might be too much for some students. So for others, they might be wandering into places they really oughtn't be, inappropriate materials and such. So either way, we need to know that we need to know how to manage this behavior. We know it can impede learning, and we know it can derail your otherwise well-functioning classroom. So what do? This discussion asks you to consider a brief scenario again. Put yourself in the position of a teacher during group work. You find out that some of the groups are doing things that they're not supposed to do. They're off task. They're playing Minecraft. They're surfing the web. They're doing everything they're not supposed to do. So you're asked to think about, what are your rules? What rules would you then enforce for that situation and for your classroom in general? How are you going to teach digital citizenship to your students? There are 9 elements of digital citizenship, which you'll learn about in the module. Teachers need to be able to address them with their students on a regular basis throughout the year. As we all know, technology is just a vital part of our society and something that changes all the time. So technology gives us a lot of power, but as they say, that also comes with great responsibility. So students won't necessarily be coming to you understanding this. You'll have to impart this to them through enforcement of reasonable rules, consequences, and with a good understanding of what being a digital citizen is all about. So how are you going to teach digital, communication, commerce, privacy, literacy, etiquette, the law, security? We have an upcoming workshop on cybersecurity and self-protection of your digital rights and responsibilities. How will you approach the rules of using technology in your classroom in a fair way that both recognizes your students' current maturity levels and encourages them to learn how to grow into responsible digital citizens? There are many ways to answer these questions, and a lot of it has to do with your own personal teaching style. So everybody's rules are probably going to be a little different. There are resources available in our course, in our module, to inform you. So what you're going to do is create your rules and post them for us along with your video to explain your rules, your rationales, and your different strategies that you're thinking about for classroom management with digital devices. Finally, to round out this module, we'll do an assignment in Google Classroom. So you're actually going to create your own Google Classroom. Pretend it's your first day of school. What does that Google Classroom look like? How will you welcome students and their parents into the class? So this is an opportunity for students to maybe get to know each other. It's obviously an opportunity for them to get to know you, and it sets the tone for your school year by explaining your expectations. Remember those classroom rules we just did? So you bring them into your Google Classroom. And also explain to them all the things that they'll be learning this semester. You'll reference your standards that you'd like to cover, any goals for the course, and maybe a little first day lesson that you might give them. It doesn't have to be very detailed at all, just something, an icebreaker to get them started. So you're going to develop your skills not just with Google and the technology tool, which is actually, you'll find it's very easy to get along with, but also with kind of presenting yourself as a teacher in charge of your very own classroom environment. So in addition to anything else that you'd like to add, you can certainly add lots of things into your Google course. You must include these 4 items. So your introduction to yourself, who are you? Tell us, maybe a little teacher letter. Could be you could have a letter addressed to parents as well as one addressed to students. Your goals for the school year, tell them what they're going to learn. These could be Goals are generally broad general statements that define overall goals, so these aren't necessarily a huge list of objectives. Goals differ from learning objectives. Goals are more long-term, like for a whole academic year. They're a little more nebulous. They're not really as measurable, and that's okay. As part of communicating your goals, though, you should also reference the Indiana Academic Standards for your grade and subject area. So these standards are the detailed objectives that need to be covered within each grade level each year as mandated by the state of Indiana. We'll look at the standards again in future modules, and you may already be familiar with them. And if you're not, this is an opportunity to get to know them. It's a very important element of the educational process, and so in order to meet the requirements for this assignment, you'll want to include both, written introduction of, what will be learned in class, your educational goals, as well as links to your standards, which you could copy and paste in there too from the standards website. It's easier to just link to the appropriate standards for your grade level so that parents especially can find them easier. Then you'll want to explain your class rules. So if you remember those rules that we talked about in digital citizenship discussion, you're going to bring those back. You can edit them if you obviously between last week and this week, you can certainly edit them to update anything that you might have learned or thought about. Make sure you have consequences and applications for all the general areas you'd like to cover. So behavior, turning in assignments, accessing devices, the computers, whatever equipment is in the classroom, your general expectations for how students should treat each other, and if they don't follow those rules, what happens to them. Also, finally, your first lesson should be described here. So your first lesson, whatever your activity will be in class. So what are you going to do on that first day? You got all those kids staring at you. This one's kind of important, right? Because it gives an introduction to your first topic. You can do this in any whichever way you deem fit. But you want to make it something that's impactful and something that's fun. It could be getting to know you exercise. It could be something related to a topic area. So for example, if you're going to be teaching English, then you might start them off with a thought about writing or what they read over the summer or something like that. And this could be something that they then would create for you in a Google Slides or Doc. Maybe they make a video, maybe they just write something answering a question. Whatever you think appropriately conveys that upcoming topic and gets them involved in the course. So we'll look at Google Classroom in a minute here in Blackboard. But that's what we're getting ourselves into. There are a bunch of links. As I said, all the tutorials and all the different things that are out there. There's a ton of great stuff, especially for Google Classroom. It's pretty big in a lot of schools, so you'd see it used again in the future. And it's got a lot to offer while still being pretty simple and easy to get to know. So I think you're going to have fun with this. And we'll turn over to Blackboard now so that you can see all this stuff and see how it works in context. So let's take a look at Module 2 in Blackboard and a quick look at some of the stuff we'll be doing. So there are the links to the two discussion projects that we'll do, so you can read about them at more length, and you'll see there's the little case study for the discussion on intellectual property, and again the reminder to make sure that you cite your source. So just provide that source there to support your suggestions, and then you'll go to the Flipgrid and post your thoughts, again 2 to 3 minutes. Same thing with classroom management. You're going to post a link to your Google Doc. Go ahead and use Google Docs. And in fact, I'll open up Drive so that you can kind of see. If you go You can log in lots of ways. I like to just type in drive.google.com. It gets me straight to my Google Drive, so you'll be able to see immediately all your stuff. So you may already use Google Drive. If you don't, for whatever reason, you can see I use it quite a bit. I've got a lot of fun stuff in here. But all you got to do is hit New Google Doc if you want to create something new, and you can title it, and you can see that the interface is almost identical to Microsoft Word. So, if you have ever used Word in your life, and I can't imagine that you haven't, then you should be able to get along with Google Docs splendidly. All you do is really start typing. And then you can do whatever you like with formatting and so forth and so on. So all that is available to you. You can get fancy, you can add images and things like that. It's got the ability to embed all kinds of stuff into it. So feel free, if you've never used it, to explore a little bit to learn more about it, because we're going to use it a few more times. And it'll help you in lots of other courses too. Google Docs is a pretty nice tool to have. And you probably know this already, but your Purdue account is a Gmail account. So when you log in to your email through Purdue, it is a Gmail that you're logging into, which means you have access to Drive and all the other good stuff that Google has to offer without having another sign-in. You already have a sign-in through Purdue. However, if you want to use a personal account to send stuff, that's all fine too. It doesn't particularly matter whether you use your Purdue or a personal Gmail account to do anything that we're going to do in this course. It's up to you what you do. Though when you go to share, regardless, this is the thing that trips up a lot of people because they forget. By default, everything that you create is private, only to you, which is great for you. But since you're sharing this with all of us, you'll need to hit the share button, make sure it gets saved, and then you'll want to decide how it is you're going to share it. You can share it directly to me, like you could type my address in, and it would go to me, and I would get a notification and it would pop up in my drive. You can certainly do it that way. You can also, when you get the link, you'll see right away anyone can view, can edit, so forth. So as long as anyone can view is available, we'll be able to see it. If you want somebody to be able to edit it too and work with you, then you can make that editable. And if you really want to get fancy, you can go to advanced settings and see all the people that your file is currently saved with or shared with, get links, decide who has access, who doesn't, prevent people from doing different things, but you can also change this, anyone who has link can view to a few more extra settings. So sometimes it's better to go on public on the web, so that this isn't always true, but sometimes it's necessary. If somebody can't see it and it just won't pop up for them, sometimes if they're in a different Google domain, the personal account versus within Purdue, sometimes it's necessary to make it public on the web. More often than not, just on and anyone with the link should suffice. But it has to say this. If you leave it as off and there's not shared with any specific people like me, then we won't be able to see what you did. So especially when you're posting this in the Flipgrid, for our purposes for this particular discussion, you're going to have to make it unavailable to anybody. You can change it again later if you don't want it to be accessible to anybody but me and you after that. If for some reason you'd like to privatize it, that's up to you. But for the time being, we need this to be on. So just remember, please, to do that so that I don't have to ask you. I hate having to chase after people for their share links. So you'll post that link when you create your video in Flipgrid. When it asks you for your link, you'll pop that link in there. So that is classroom management. Now, The spreadsheet gradebook, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on here because there's actually a full video tutorial where I go through the entire assignment step by step. So I would recommend just watching that if you need help with this project. It is not that hard, but if you're new to spreadsheets, then it might be kind of hard at first. So what it's going to ask you to do is go through kind of a series of steps, where you've got, okay, we're going to do some points, and you start with a tutorial or with a template. I'm sorry, you'll start with a template with a very basic grade book in it, which would be this file. Download this file. It'll come in as an Excel file that you can then open with Apple iWork or Google Spreadsheets, whatever tickles your fancy, or works great in Excel too. But when you look at the directions, it'll have you adding things to that template. So you just basically follow them step by step. There's links to tutorials if you need help along the way, or you can just watch the entire presentation that I put out there. It's several minutes long. It'll give you a full detailed interpretation of everything. If you follow along with that, you really can't go wrong. So I would recommend watching that, which is of course a separate video. All the directions are here. You can look at it. Finally, for Google Classroom, we'll spend a little bit more time here. If for some reason you've never seen Classroom before, and it's possible that you haven't, this will be your first introduction to it. The assignment description will give you all the details about logging in and setting up, as well as what we want in it. So really what we need in it are just those 4 things I described to you earlier: the intro, your goals and standards, your class rules, that document that you made, and your first lesson. So after that, you can do any kind of fun things that you want. And then when you turn it in, you're going to give me a code to enter your class. You can also add me as a student or as a teacher. That's another option. Some people do it that way. If you just send the code in Blackboard, which, you have to still send me something for this, even though you're not creating a file to send to me like you might in the spreadsheet gradebook, where you're actually creating a document and sending me that. This doesn't really have a document, so you'll just literally add, your Google code here, on whatever that is. So it'll be a 8 or 6-digit number, something like that, and you'll add that number in here. That's all I need, literally. When you submit that, that's all I need. I need some kind of submission in Blackboard because of the way Blackboard works. So even if you shared it to me outside of Blackboard, you still need to make this submission. So, once you see it, you'd hit submit. Once you've got your code in there, you'd hit submit, and off it goes to me so that I can use the rubric to grade it for you. So Google Classroom, I'll go ahead and jump into that. Now you're going to see that I am enrolled in lots and lots of Google Classrooms because we've been doing this a few times now. So you can see how many different Google Classrooms I'm in. And there are some really awesome examples here. Unfortunately, due to the way Google Classroom works, I can't share these with you directly. So I'm showing you here in a video, and this should give you a pretty good overview of an example of what your finished classroom looks like. So here's Amber. Amber's a pretty good example of a high school, from an English secondary program. And Amber, some of you might know her, she did some pretty cool stuff. So there's her introduction. She's using the tool called Topics. So when you create something new, which happens in this plus button, pretty much there'll be a plus button and stuff will be in there. And I'll show you what the teacher view looks like in a second. But I'm here as her student because she asked me to join via the code. You can see I'm the only student in here, and I can't show you her code because I don't know what it is. But you can see that there's always going to be these 3 tabs: Stream, Classmates, and About. Stream and About are the most important ones, of course. And so she's posted her rules here. She actually used a Word and posted it as a PDF, which is also totally fine. If you're a Word fan and don't like Google Docs, you can certainly use Word to make PDFs and put them in your drive. But she's got, you know, a few pictures and things like that linked. She's actually got her link back to her blend space for her teacher bio, which is a super cute way to do it, and you've already made it, so you might as well share it. There's her link to the standards for her grade level and more information, scope, and sequence. She wrote a specific letter to parents, so she actually developed a little letter just for parents, and then they can read through it. So she used the About section as sort of like the parent section, which a lot of people do. And then Stream wound up being the place for the kids to be. So she's got, you know, some information about what to do, where to find things. So she's directing us to the places we need to go. And then there's her lesson. So where are the stories and blah, blah, blah. And so then we can answer the question by actually watching this video and following the link and so forth. So that was her little lesson. You can see it's very simple, very short. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. So if I go back to here, I'll show you a elementary example. Megan had done a nice one for much younger children, and she also enrolled me in her class as a student, and you can see that she's got everything kind of here on the stream separated with topics. So topics are a way of categorizing things within here because Google Classroom is fairly simple. There's really only a few things that you can do. There's Stream and About. Those are pretty much your main topic pages. And so as you add things to the stream, you can see the first thing she added is on the bottom because it's hierarchical from the bottom up, or from the top down, I mean. Just like a blog post or your Facebook timeline. You can think of it like your Facebook timeline. You know, your introduction might wind up at the bottom unless you do it last, or you put it in About where everything stays in one place. And she chose not to use About, which is totally fine. But, you know, in some cases you might want to use About, so you can keep things that you'd like to have accessible always there on that tab, and then only things that you know will be kind of happening in sequence, you know, the live stream of the class, so to speak. You would see that here instead. So there's several different ways of doing it. Let me show you kind of a blank course that would be sort of a test environment where I used to mess things around and make videos like this. So this is the teacher view. You'll see it this way when you create your course. So create question, create assignment, create announcement, so forth. I did not choose to add anything in the About section here, but I certainly can. And every time you add something, whatever it is, you always get these icons. You can attach files. You can bring them in from your drive, which is really useful because there they are. There's my rules. I can pop them right in there, and there they are. I can post that. So, I mean, that's literally how easy it is. It's a very easy program to get along with. You can add YouTube videos. It'll search YouTube and bring them right in here. You can add web links. So that's what those 4 icons mean. And as far as these items, really, this is a question, or this is an assignment, I'm sorry, because it's got a done, not done. So assignments don't have grade books or anything, but you can decide who to send it out to, and whether it's got a due date. It'll remind students if there's something that's due at a certain time, and then you can add those topics. So if you want to separate it into, say, 5 different little lessons about language arts, then you would create that topic to say language arts, and then all of your lessons can be tagged as language arts so that you have them. And they're easy to find. So hit assign there, and it'll get posted. And now you can see I have a new topic on the side, language arts, and if I just click on it, I would see everything that's tagged by that topic. So that it's a very nice organizational tool. I highly recommend some type of organization, whether that's topics or about or both, so that, even though we're not posting much in this assignment, if you were to use it in the future, your stream would get pretty hairy if you weren't using topics. So do your best with this. Have some fun. Play around. Explore the different options. You can see how simple it is. It's very easy to get along with. I think the biggest trick with this one is that when you start Google Classroom for the very first time, which I can't show you this because I've already started Google Classroom, but when you first start it up, it will ask you a question. Are you a teacher or are you a student? You are a teacher. If you say you're a student, you won't be able to create your own Google Classrooms. And then you'll have to ask me to go and create one for you and add you as a teacher. So it's not a big deal to do that, but it's a lot easier for you if you don't have that annoying part in there. So having control over your own classroom would be nice. So I really highly recommend saying I'm a teacher, because that's what you are going to be someday. You are not a student. With that in mind, one more thing about students. Under students is your class code. So this little code here is what I would need to get from you in Blackboard. So that's literally all you need to do. If you feel like it, you can do invite students and add me by email too. That's not really necessary because the code would get me in also. So with that said, that is Google Classroom. Have some fun, be creative, do your best, and ask questions if you have any. Good luck.